Imagine a city that runs on clean electricity.
A city that's powered by sun, wind,
and energy from the earth.
Con Edison is committed to turning that dream
into reality,
making clean energy more accessible for everyone.
From South Brooklyn
to North Westchester,
Con Edison is helping build a future where there's clean energy for all.
Now and for generations to come.
I'm Tom Gabriel, President and CEO of the United Way of Westchester and Putnam, and it's my privilege to welcome you to our Women's Leadership Council event, Take a Walk in Her Shoes. Although we can't be together in person tonight, I hope all of you are sitting back in a comfy chair, enjoying your gratitude gift bags, which included wine, breads and spreads, and a lovely soy candle. First off, I want to thank our generous event sponsors and other individuals who have contributed to this event. Their extraordinary support has enabled us to produce this event and ensure that its proceeds benefit those that truly need it. Here's a list of who they are. Tonight's event, Take a Walk in Her Shoes, serves many purposes. Firstly, it's a celebration of the work of our Women's Leadership Council, a group of passionate, dedicated, and generous women, and a couple of men, committed to helping the United Way of Westchester and Putnam make a difference in our community. The event is also an opportunity for us to recognize our 2021 Woman of Distinction honoree, Taryn Duff, Vice President of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs at Empire City Casino by MGM Resorts. Congratulations, Taryn, and bravo. It's also an opportunity for us to showcase an amazing panel of women in the healthcare industry that have led us and our community through this health crisis, including Westchester County Commissioner of Health, Dr. Sherlita Amler, President of New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital, Stacy Petrover, Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer at New York-Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital, Laurie Walsh, and the CEO of Mount Vernon Neighborhood Health Center, Judith M. Watson. And we're delighted to have Elizabeth Bracken Thompson, partner at Thompson Bender, and our 2017 Woman of Distinction awardee as our moderator for that panel. And finally, tonight's event is a fundraiser to support ALICE Women, Children, and Families. So who or what is ALICE? Well, ALICE is an acronym which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. At its core, it's at the center of a national movement to change the way we define and understand the struggles of households that earn just above the federal poverty level, but not enough for a survival budget, what we used to call the working poor. Our United Way co-authors the New York State ALICE study every 2 years, and you can find the most recent version on our website at uwwp.org/ALICE. So ALICE are our childcare workers, our security guards, cashiers, gas station attendants, the salespeople at your big box stores, home health aides, waiters and waitresses. In Westchester and Putnam, more than 40% of households are ALICE or living in poverty. Think about that for a second. There's more than 1 million people in Westchester. That's 400,000 people. 71% of single female-headed households with children are living below the ALICE threshold. 54% of all Hispanic households and 51% of all Black households are also living below the ALICE threshold. And ALICE is everywhere in every community. They're in Peekskill and Mount Vernon, but also in Scarsdale and in Pound Ridge. Thankfully, our United Way has been on the front lines helping women, children, and families so they can survive today's crisis and ultimately become more self-sufficient tomorrow. So far, this year alone, we have administered more than $700,000 in grants to our nonprofit partners and distributed almost $6 million in essential goods to people in need, like books, school supplies, diapers, mattresses, and the like. We've also connected more than 80,000 families to the programs and services they need through our free confidential 211 helpline. We've also delivered more food to more than 25,000 families through our Ride United food distribution program, and we've distributed tens of thousands of books and back to school supplies through our United to Read and Education United programs. And we've also helped thousands of families apply for the Earned Income and Child Tax Credits, the Emergency Rental Assistance Fund, and the Excluded Worker Fund. And those are just a fraction of what we do every day to help our community, to help women, children, and families survive, thrive, and become more self-sufficient. But we don't do this work alone. Everything we do is in collaboration with hundreds of nonprofit partners, schools, and government agencies. And it's buttressed by the generosity of people like you. So thank you very much. Now, let's get the evening started. It's my privilege and honor to introduce last year's Woman of Distinction, my good friend, Maria M. Trusa, the CEO of Formé Medical Center and Urgent Care.
Thank you, Tom. It is an honor to be here introducing someone that is my friend. Each year, the Women's Leadership Council presents an award to a woman that has made significant contributions in making real, lasting, and significant change for the betterment of our community, someone we call our Woman of Distinction. As last year's recipient of this award, I am deeply honored to introduce to you a prominent voice for the empowerment of women, a woman with a remarkable passion for civic responsibility and volunteer service. She is a strong proponent for the advancement of women, gender equality, and publicly encouraging policies that support those goals. Taryn Duff, Vice President of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs at Empire City Casino by MGM Resorts. Taryn has extensive experience within the fields of public policy, public relations, and communications. She began her impressive career as a legislation paralegal in California, then returned to New York, where she soon entered the political arena, working on dozens of political campaigns and represented multiple high-level political figures. Very recently, Taryn was once again named among the Women Power 100 by City and State magazine. She has also been recognized as a Woman in Business honoree by 914 magazine 2018. She has been the recipient of several awards, including the Bronx Chamber of Commerce honoree for distinguished service, City and State magazine's Above and Beyond Award, and a Woman of Influence by the Irish Voice, among others. A dedicated community service member, a former board member of United Way of Westchester and Putnam, Taryn serves as a board member of Arts Westchester, the Business Council of Westchester, Yonkers Workforce Development Board, Yonkers Mayor's Women's Advisory Council, the Yonkers Career and Technical Education Advisory Council, and is one of the founding board member of my social movement, Yo Digo No Más, I Say No More. Taryn, you are truly an inspiration. Thank you for impacting so many lives and making the world a better place. On behalf of United of Westchester and Putnam and the Women's Leadership Council, I am honored to present to you the 2021 Women of Distinction Award.
Thank you, Maria.
Congratulations, my friend. I adore you.
Thank you very much. That was a lot. Hi, everyone. I am so grateful for this recognition and to be able to participate in this event, even virtually. I cannot say enough about the incredible work that the team at United Way does. And I really commend all the women who take the time to engage in the Women's Leadership Council. I want to thank Maria for that incredible introduction. I met Maria when we were serving on the United Way board together, as she said, and we did develop an incredible friendship, and I am very grateful for that as well. I had the pleasure of serving on the board for a few years, and one of the last things that I got to do as a board member was serve on the search committee that was lucky enough to find Gabriel, who is just a gift to Westchester and Putnam, and I know you all know that. We're just so lucky to have him and all the team members at United Way who give so tirelessly of themselves. It's funny that Tom really talked a lot about Alice and the Alice population, because personally, that was really the work that was very interesting to me. And as you know, it's one of many things that United Way does, but as Tom said earlier, if you caught that, it stands for asset limited, income constrained, employed. So these are people working hard to support their families, keeping their heads barely above water, and are one financial hiccup away from it all falling apart. And people become a member of the Alice population without even really knowing how they got there. But too often it's a result of trauma, pain, and struggle. And so I'd like to give you one example. There was a girl who dreamed of becoming a lawyer. She was the victim of rape at barely 15 years old, and she fled from the East Coast to the West Coast to start a new life with a Marine she had fallen in love with as a teenager. She entered college, intended to achieve her dreams, but she got pregnant in her first semester. She got married, she had a baby, she went back to school immediately, but quickly found herself caring for a newborn on her own, a full-time student, a part-time employee, just unable to make ends meet while her husband fought in a war in the Middle East. Unfortunately, her marriage quickly turned into an abusive one, and she didn't really realize how bad it truly was until the news reported a story of a young mother and child being murdered due to a domestic dispute. And her friend thought that it was her and her daughter. It wasn't her, but it could have been. That's when she knew she had to escape the marriage. The next few years were filled with turmoil that included years fighting for custody of her daughter, sending her into bankruptcy, while she also cared for her terminally ill mother, who unfortunately died at the age of 51. It was a long road paved with devastation and struggle. There isn't time tonight to tell you all the full story of this girl, but unfortunately, she had no idea that an organization like United Way existed or that anyone could have helped her. This is just one story about one girl, and that girl is me. This is the first time that I'm sharing this publicly, which is really hard for me. But I'm sharing it because I know that there are thousands, unfortunately, probably millions of people right now who just need a little help from us. I am blessed to have overcome statistics that predicted that I not be sitting here with you right now, for sure, with a career that I love, safe, secure, with a successful 31-year-old daughter who is actually in law school right now, earning her law degree. I could not be more proud of her. But when life throws incredible challenges at you, it's really hard to see a path to triumph when you don't even know where to turn for help, or that anyone, frankly, is even willing to help. And United Way provides hope and light to so many people. I have not done anything special to help United Way that would make me any more deserving of this recognition today than any of you. I have given of my time, and I keep them at the forefront of my mind for opportunities for partnerships, donations, and funding, or things like that. I also happen to have the honor of working for an incredible company, MGM Resorts, that is committed to the work that United Way does in our communities. And that also allows me to continue to work with them in several ways. But I'm always amazed to learn about huge impacts that result from seemingly small but compounded efforts. And so I hope that each of you takes a little bit more time to learn about the lives that are being touched and drastically improved through the United Way, so that you can each put your effort into expanding that impact. And maybe that's, getting groups of friends or family together, telling them about the work that's being done, and encouraging them to participate with you. But what I know for sure is that it is really the efforts of all of us collectively that will allow the incredible team at United Way to just continue to broaden their reach and to help more and more people. So however you're engaging, you're helping to change lives. And that is something to be incredibly proud of. So I hope that we can do more of that together. And I want to thank Tom and the entire team at United Way for this recognition today, but more importantly, for their unending selflessness and the work that they do day in and day out to help so many and change lives for the better. I am grateful for you. And it is each of you who are really, truly deserving of recognition. So thank you. And thank you for having me tonight.
Well, congratulations, Taryn. I mean, I cannot think of a more brave person that I've met to share your story with us tonight. And I call you a friend and colleague. I've known you for many, many years. I never knew that story that you shared with us. But you know, Taryn, as you pointed out, the Women's Leadership Council is about women empowering women and strengthening our community. And I'm telling you, by sharing your story tonight, I think you've done that with all of us here. We're so lucky to be on this Zoom call with you. So congratulations again. My name is Elizabeth Bracken Thompson from Thompson and Bender. I have the honor of being a past woman of distinction also. And I am so excited to introduce this incredible panel to you tonight. And you know, Taryn, your story has set the perfect platform, I think, for this panel of women leaders that we're going to be meeting tonight. I'm introducing them in alphabetical order. They have incredible biographies, but they're included in the programs that you all received in your goodie bags. I encourage you to read their backgrounds because they're just so impressive. In alphabetical order, they are Dr. Sherlita Amler, Westchester County Commissioner of Health, Stacy Petrover, President of New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital, Laurie Walsh, Vice President and Chief Nursing Officer at New York-Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital, and Judith Watson, CEO of Mount Vernon Neighborhood Health Center, Inc. Welcome, ladies. I'm so honored to have you all with us this evening and to share your stories of leadership and also leading through a crisis. Because one thing all of these women have in common, besides being incredible leaders, is that they have been challenged by a crisis that none of us have known, at least in our lifetimes. And so I'm going to begin with our Commissioner of Westchester County Health, and that's Dr. Sherlita Amler. And Sherlita, I want to ask you a question that perhaps you'd share with us. What was the greatest crisis you ever confronted? We know that you've confronted COVID. We know you've been challenged by it for the last 2 years, but what is the greatest crisis you've ever been confronted with in your own career?
Well, I would have to say that obviously the COVID pandemic has been the greatest crisis that I've ever been confronted with, both as a physician and as a public health leader. When I was a young doctor at CDC, we often talked about the possibility of a worldwide pandemic, but the assumption was always that it would be, a new strain of flu. And at least that was something that we all knew a lot about, maybe a flu with a new mutation, but we never really talked about a novel virus like COVID. And so I would say that in dealing with the COVID pandemic, the most difficult aspect of that has been uncertainty, not just unknown, but, because information gaps you can work around, but not knowing what to expect tomorrow, it really impedes and robs us of our ability to plan. And COVID was a totally new novel virus. So everything about this virus has been uncertain. I mean, we knew nothing about the natural course of this disease. We didn't know how it was spread. If you remember to begin with, we didn't know if it was person to person, animal to person, object to person. I remember disinfecting my groceries and leaving the bags in the garage because I had no idea if I was going to bring COVID home from the grocery store.
Me too.
I mean, we didn't know the incubation period. We didn't know, how long before somebody gets sick. Is it days? Is it weeks? Is it months? We just really didn't know. We didn't even know what the symptoms of the disease were. People would say, I think I've lost my taste and smell. And we're like, do you think that's related to COVID? Is that part of it? We really just didn't know. We didn't know what activities were dangerous. People would say, can I go to the gym? Can I go out to eat? What can I do? What is safe? Can I go to the doctor? A lot of people opted not to go to the doctor, and they wouldn't go to a hospital. And after a while, you couldn't go to the hospital to visit your loved ones that were in the hospital. Was it safe to visit my elderly 99-year-old father-in-law? And, the answer was probably not. We didn't have drugs. We didn't know if any of our old drugs could help. We had no vaccines. Once we did get vaccines, we didn't know what the side effects were. We didn't know what the adverse effects were going to be. And then there's all these rumors that started floating around, that the vaccines could make you sterile, and which scared people and kept them out of our clinics. So I think one of the things that was most frightening about it was that every time we thought we knew something, the information changed. And I remember initially we told people, unless you have symptoms, you don't need to wear a mask. And then we went back and said, no, everybody needs to wear masks. And so the public thought, these people don't know what they're talking about. They're all crazy out there, and obviously they don't have a clue. So why should I listen to them? And the reality was, initially, we really didn't know. So after 2 years, we've got, new vaccines, we've got new drugs to treat the virus. And we thought, we've got this, we know what to do. And, we were in the routine of just doing our COVID vaccines and testing. And now we get yet another new variant, Omicron. And our case counts have started to go up again. And today it was announced that we have a case of Omicron in Westchester. So we're, kind of, back to the drawing boards on some things. But there is one thing that I know for certain that I really do want to share with people tonight. And that is that I know that if you get vaccinated, you are going to have less severe infection. Even with Omicron, it appears that will hold true, that you will have less of a chance of being hospitalized and you will have less of a chance of dying. So I think COVID is an extreme example, but for most people, I think uncertainty really is what makes planning difficult in life. And so Omicron for me, and COVID have reinforced something that I learned very early in life when my first husband died in an accident about 2 months after I started medical school. I was left with 2 small children. My youngest daughter has spina bifida and was in a wheelchair. I had no job and, a lot of uncertainty. I didn't know if I would be able to stay in medical school. I didn't know how I was going to pay to support my family. I didn't know what my future held at all. And I really learned that I really just had to acknowledge the stress of that uncertainty was playing in my life at that point in time. But I couldn't allow it to paralyze me with fear, which was the natural inclination that, to just quit, give up, go back to work, and try to build my life again. So I stayed in medical school. I obviously graduated. I did a residency. And the one thing that I learned out of all of this is that every day I would make a list of issues that I had to cope with, and I would work through them one at a time. So I think, let's face it, each of us at one time or other find ourselves having to do this, having to take everything, in total, trying to figure out, what can we do that's going to get us through the day that we're in. And so I think by placing just one foot in front of the other and working to get to a place where we can start planning again is how I succeeded. That's how what I would suggest to people that I talk with about my own personal experience. And I can say when it comes to COVID, I'm looking forward to the day when I can start putting COVID behind me and planning once again to address all the public health issues that plague our community, start planning for how we successfully overcome them. And I appreciate being asked to be here today.
Well, thank you so much, Sherlita. I have to say that sharing your story, hearing Taryn's story, and now hearing your story, I bet there's lots of women on this Zoom call who can actually relate to those stories that you shared. Maybe not as severe, but we've all had our challenges and face crises in our lives. That's great advice. Just write it down, put one step in front of the other, and take one day at a time. So thank you, Sherlita.
You're welcome.
those words of wisdom. And now I'm going to turn to Laurie Ann, who is the Lawrence Hospital's Chief Nursing Officer and VP of Patient Care Services at New York Presbyterian Lawrence Hospital. And you certainly were there on the front line, Laurie, when the virus first appeared. I believe the first COVID patient from New Rochelle was in your hospital, and it must have been a daunting task to keep your staff motivated each day, to lead them through this devastation, to keep them going on. And I would love to hear, I'm sure the folks on this Zoom call would love to hear how you led yourself through this crisis and what kind of inspiration you used to get yourself through each day.
Thank you, Liz, for even asking. It's a question people ask me many times. How did I keep going? How did the staff keep going? And I just want to start by sharing and saying thank you to Dr. Amler, because really we didn't know. And when I look back on the very first patient coming through here, and then I'm going to say the wave, I describe it as a tsunami, how quickly we became overwhelmed with the amount of patients that had COVID. And really it was the unknown. And so, as Dr. Amler said, put a mask on, take mask off, do this, do that, right? And yet we're telling staff to take care of patients who we have no idea how it spread, how they contacted, how we could be getting it or being, infected, or really what to do to protect our staff, right? And so, when I think about that, I think back to really, it wasn't about me. It was about the healthcare team. And I'm so honored to be a nurse because really we were the front line. It was the nurses who were out there really right from the beginning, trying to take care of these patients in a very scary environment. When I look back, I think about the number of patients who came in, who then we quickly said to them, you can't bring your families. Right. And the elderly patients coming in, and it really tugged at my heart. We're a nursing, we're used to having family and relatives at bedside while patients are ill or dying. And we became those families. I mean, nurses holding hands with patients they've never even met, wearing gloves and talking about how I couldn't even feel the patient's hands because we were wearing gloves. And that's the last thing the patient felt was a hand covered, right? Talking to families at the last minute on FaceTime so they could see their family member and understand and the chance to say goodbye. It was heart-wrenching for the staff in particular, the nurses at the bedside, the physicians, any of the clinicians that had to do this. And, I thought often about my own parents, right? Like, what if this was them? They were elderly, and what could I do to protect them? How can I help? And when you see how the nurses came in particular, every day they came in, not knowing if they'd go home sick, not knowing if their coworker had become sick the day before and had themselves be infected or infected them, losing coworkers. When you see that, what inspires you is that it's a profession that cares. It wants to make a difference. And for me, I wanted to be there helping. My roots are a bedside nurse. That's where I started. I'm in administration now, but my heart will always be for the patient and for the staff. And so, I think about staff bringing groceries to their coworkers who couldn't get groceries in, because I don't know if you all realized that, but Westchester, when they quickly learned what's happening, you couldn't even order groceries online.
I remember.
And so everyone was home, right? Following the CDC guidelines, the GOH guidelines, isolating. They weren't allowed out. They didn't have food because they got sent home and said, don't go out, right? And so we had to actually go around and buy groceries and deliver to staff, right? But, when you look at what it takes, I'm so grateful really to all the nurses, particularly at Lawrence, but throughout healthcare, who got up every day and came in to try to make a difference. And if they're doing that, how can I, as a leader, not be inspired by that, to work alongside them, to help them? We took an oath as nurses to heal and to protect and to certainly bring out the best we can in the community. This was our community under attack. It was, I often say it was like a war zone. We were in the foxhole, and the relationships that forged from that were really of that mentality, right? No one can understand what they saw, what they went through, the amount of death, just the fear of overcoming everything, but it bonded them in such a way that even to talk about it, I'm going to say for me, when people ask me, tell me about it, I'm like, I really can't. It brings such emotion back to me and brings me to a place of real heartaches about how much death we saw because we didn't know. And I mean, I'm forever grateful to the physicians and the scientists out there, how quickly they realized how to treat, how to manage, and what a difference it made. But those early few weeks, that was not possible. So for me, what inspired me and what will continue to always inspire me is that nursing really is the heart and soul of healthcare. And we were there to help. And we will always be there to help. And we saw that. And, when they talk about the, mass resignation, that doesn't really happen here in my campus, which really told me how dedicated and committed the nurses are, the team of healthcare providers here are to really making that commitment and improving health of patients and hopefully never having to go through something like this again, maybe 100 years from now, who knows, right? But, this was a pandemic that when you try to describe it to someone, you say it's something you never want to relive. You certainly remember it with such painful moments in time, but what keeps you going, what kept me going was my team. I had amazing directors who took 24 coverage. We were here. One of us was here always helping staff. I had an amazing VP of ops who was here helping hang curtains with me to create more ICU beds and space and double up rooms and triple up rooms in the middle of the night. Always seemed to happen on a Friday night too. I don't know why. We were like scrambling to get different, ICUs created and more capacity for the patients. But it's that teamwork that you saw and that it wasn't about us. And as afraid and as fearful as dealing with COVID was in those early stages, we had to overcome that. And nurses overcame it, physicians overcame it. And that inspired me because if you can come in and take care of somebody that you have no idea how this is going to play out for you personally, right? Your own life at risk, but they did it. And
well, that is, I mean, I have to say, Laurie, you are an inspiration, I think, to all of us watching because the idea of having to face that challenge every day and watching those number of deaths and seeing those dedicated staff members come in each day and confront that. I mean, our hats are off to you and we thank you for the inspiration you've given us, the life-saving care. So thank you, Laurie. And now I'm going to turn to Judith Watson, who's the CEO of the Mount Vernon Neighborhood Health Center with more than two decades of leadership in community-based healthcare. What are your own personal resources, Judith, that you have relied upon through this crisis to help you get through and manage?
Hi, Elizabeth, thank you so very much. And Tom, thank you so much for everything that you and your team does at the United Way, and for all the folks who are tuned in, and for the other esteemed panelists. I was just sitting here and I was just reflecting as everyone was speaking. As the third speaker, I feel extremely fortunate this evening because I feel like I've had an opportunity to hear and to listen and to really take this in. Taryn, I have to say that it took great courage to say some of the things, to share some of the things that you shared with us about yourself. And all of the while you were speaking, it just made me think about what I know to be true. And you have illustrated that for me again this evening, in that everything that happens to us in life, all of the adversity, all of the pain, for me, I have always felt that this is the best part of me. It's the best part of me. It is where I draw my strength from. I had, and I'll just share a little bit as well, I had a very rough upbringing. We obviously were not people of means, and I was born in Jamaica. I migrated here and joined my parents at the age of 7. And I just became just a crazy person. You know, I was just a crazy person. There is no real other way to say it. My teens were tumultuous and riddled with all types of issues, you know, and somehow I landed in the United States Army. And that really is what turned my world around, you know. And I'm sure that I took the exam just to get out of class, because I was one of those who skipped class and didn't really like school. And so somehow I landed in the United States Army, and that's really what turned things around for me. But even so, there were so many different things that occurred in my life, painful things that occurred in my life. And that is where I draw my strength from. And in fact, that is exactly where I drew my strength from to get me through COVID. Dr. Amler, everyone on the panel, I thought did a really wonderful job explaining what we as a society just went through. I mean, and are going through, right? We're in a state of emergency currently.
Yeah, it's not done.
It's not done, you know, and who knows what's to come. But what I do know is that I am extremely grateful that we survived. I'm grateful that we survived, and I try to find the good out of things. And as horrendous as COVID was, there was a lot of good that came out of it. You know, look at us. We're able to communicate via Zoom tonight, you know, or I don't know if this is GoTo or Zoom. I think this is Zoom this evening. And so there were so many good things that came out, that has come out of this horrible, horrible pandemic. And so how did I get through it? I tried to focus. I tried to stay focused. I learned in the military to be strong, to be resilient, to take it a day at a time, take it as it comes, right? Coupled with faith, coupled with family support. I belong to a support group, you know, where regularly, a few times per week, I'm able to sit with people who are like-minded and who have similar issues and challenges that I have experienced in my life, that I'm able to share what's happening. So I think that too did help me get through it. But again, it was, and I do apologize. I am so sorry. I apologize.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay, Judith. We are all going through this in our lives today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm sorry about that. I'm sitting in the room of Westchester County Legislator Alfreda Williams, who's receiving an award this evening, and I wanted to be here for her. So I'm in her office, and so I do apologize.
For women supporting women. So we support you for doing that.
Yes, thanks so much. And so I won't go on for much longer. But I feel grateful to have survived COVID. You know, I had tested positive at the health center. We lost employees, longtime employees. We lost patients. Thankfully, we were able to remain open and accessible to everyone who needed care during the pandemic. We're still struggling down in the city of Mount Vernon in particular, where the vaccine rates are so much lower than in other communities. And so we're still going through it. But what I know, and again, it's the adversity. It's not so much the great times and the fun times and the wonderful times. It's from the adversity is where I draw my strength, and to not go through it alone, to understand that I'm not alone, and I have an entire network who helps me to get through these things. So I won't.
Great words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Judith. Absolutely. I think this whole evening is about community. And as I said at the beginning, women empowering other women. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I'm going to mention that we're going to open this up for questions in the chat room. But our last speaker on the panel is Stacy Petrover, who, as I mentioned, is the president of New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital. Now, Stacy, as the president of this very prominent hospital, what tools, I'm going to ask you as a woman, have you used from your toolbox that were key for you to be able to manage through this crisis as a woman?
Okay, well, as a woman, I want to start with congratulating my fellow recipients of this recognition. And also I want to say to Taryn, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was remarkable, and you're remarkable. So thank you. So I don't often think about how am I going to do this as a woman. I think that we want, men and women don't necessarily have different tools, but I think it's how we choose to use our tools. And I'm very comfortable, sometimes probably too comfortable, displaying emotion when it's called for. If a team member has an illness or lost a family member or had a tragic event, I'm gonna lead with empathy and softness and compassion. And that's my comfort zone, because that's true to who I am. Day to day, my toolbox is, robust and flexes based on what's in front of me. And I don't think I make conscious decisions to be a woman leader, although I am, and I like it. I just lead the best way I know how. And that's with authenticity.
Oh, that
You just, that's where I come from. Authenticity. And I'm generally warm and outgoing, and I don't shy away from showing that. And I have to say, I mean, we've all kind of talked a little bit about our COVID journeys. I am different from my 3 colleagues who spoke in that I am not a clinician. So in the heart of COVID, what does a non-clinician leader do to support her team? We show up every day, all day. We show up, and whether it was bringing tangerines because they have vitamin C, or carrots because they have vitamin A and we want to keep the team healthy and going, or cookies because everybody needs cookies, you just show up and do whatever you can for your teams. At one point in time, I remember there are 2 days within the COVID experience that will never leave me. One was when we had multiple deaths on a unit that in 4 hours that nobody in that unit had ever experienced before. And we're talking about very seasoned, experienced nurses. And I had no idea what to do. And so I grabbed a bunch of cards that had been sent by the local children, and 9 out of 10 of the cards had nurses drawn in them with the little white hat and the Red Cross. And all of these children wanted to be nurses and doctors. And so I took the pile and I went upstairs and I just started reading the cards to the nurses. And we had a really nice cry for it.
Like that. Bringing me to tears. I mean, that is so touching.
And it enabled them to let out what they were feeling, and enabled me to be supportive. And that was really the journey. And then as soon as things started, kind of, I won't say calming down because that never happened, but it started to be more manageable, and things were going in the right direction. I remember it was the very first day I took off in 90 days. It was the Thursday before Memorial Day weekend. And it was my first day off, and I was at home. Please forgive me. And I got a phone call that one of our nurses who had been hospitalized in another hospital had passed away. And we had all been communicating with our counterparts. All of the leaders in this hospital had been communicating with our counterparts at that hospital, and she was getting better. So to get that news on that day,
it must have been devastating. Devastating.
It broke me, but I knew that if I was broken, I couldn't imagine what was going on with our team. So I got in my car to drive up there, and when I got to the hospital, people didn't know who I was, and I realized why, because I was in sweatpants and a baseball cap without a stitch of makeup on. And I was really, really short because I usually wear 4-inch heels. Nobody knew who I was. But just being there and COVID be damned, hugging and holding and crying together. That's what I was able to do.
Amazing.
That's what I was able to do. And
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say,
and I just have to say, And I didn't do that alone. I did that with all of my team leaders, my leaders, and you know, who are, some of them are on this Zoom right now. And we did it as a team, every single thing. And we led together. And that is also why I got through it.
Well, you know, I think the words that you're sitting in front of there, stay amazing, sort of reflect how we're all feeling the story you just told us, because you are amazing. I mean, to work for 90 days straight, to keep leading that team through it. And one of the resonating themes I hear tonight from all the women who've spoken is the teamwork. You know, Judith with the United States Army, and Sherlita, you speaking about the teamwork and all the people that you've been working with, Laurie Ann, your teamwork with your nurses, and Stacey, your team. But you mentioned one thing, Stacey, and if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you about it. You said, I don't know if the toolbox for women or men are really that different. And I wonder, throughout your career as a woman leader, if you've ever had any feedback that makes you wonder if you're being judged differently as a woman leader versus a man.
So the answer is absolutely. Down, no hesitation there, Liz.
Right.
So when I was first made a vice president at York-Presbyterian in 2010, I was fortunate enough to be given an executive coach. And my boss at the time encouraged every single person in our organization to give me feedback. About 8 months into it, I would walk down the hall and get feedback from one person, do it this way, and feedback from this person, do it that way. And I finally walked into her office, laid my head down on her desk and said, I'm tapping out. I can't get any more feedback, because it was like a wrestling match. And I just had to, and I had to kind of just take the feedback, process it, and figure out how it was going to come out the other end, you know, in how I lead. And over the last, 12 years since then, I've gotten a lot more feedback. and sometimes, and it's oftentimes positive, and sometimes there are things that people want me to do differently. And most recently, probably because, maybe a little bit of the Me Too movement, maybe a little bit of just coming into my own in this role, I've been told sometimes I could come off as a little stern. And so a few weeks ago, we were all on a Zoom like this, talking about biases and whatnot, and I decided to raise that issue. And I said, I'm hard pressed to believe that any of my male colleagues have ever been told that they're a little stern. And so
I see a lot of shaking heads, by the way, in our little tiles on the screen. I'm sure we all can relate. Thanks for sharing that story, because I think we can all, as women, relate to that. I see in the chat box, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret Tramontine, because we have a lot of questions, and Margaret's going to share them with our panelists to answer right now.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure. I think we have to unmute Margaret. There we go.
I unmuted myself.
Great.
Hello and welcome. I've been so looking forward to this. You guys were all kind of like the vision that I had for this particular event. And Judith, you are my new special lady, because I've been fortunate enough to know and meet most of the panelists. And of course, Liz is fabulous. So this is wonderful. I'm looking for questions here in the chat box. Let's see. I see one thing. It's not a question, it's a comment. Lessons learned, be authentic, put one foot in front of the other, and why are we not ruling the world? There you go. Love that. And I think Stacey certainly a good comment that said, amen, Stacey, we show up. And that's what leaders do. I do have a question that was submitted earlier. In talking from experience about leadership, Would you say that leadership is a learned skill, or is it something that is innate? And how would you define it? So I will, whoever wants to tackle that.
I'm happy to tackle that.
There you go.
So,
Thank you, Judith.
yeah. So I feel very strongly, wrong or right, I feel very strongly that folks are born leaders. I believe that some leadership can certainly be taught, but I think that some of the greatest leaders are folks who were born to lead. I feel very strongly about that. Again, right or wrong.
No right or wrong. It could be a combination, but yes. So you're saying it's innate.
Stacey or Sherlita?
I think that leaders are people who can actually make decisions, because although that seems like an easy trait, a lot of people have a great deal of difficulty making a decision, sticking with it, and being able to explain their decisions to others. And I think that that is a key leadership trait.
We're here.
Agree with that. Yeah. Stacey, how do you feel about that?
I feel like it's a little bit of both. I do think there is something innate that makes you want to lead people, but you have to evolve. That's, for God's sakes, all the feedback that I got is why I'm sitting in this chair, because you have to learn, you have to evolve, and you have to take what people are giving you and process it. So, yeah.
For sure.
I honestly don't think that other people can make you a good leader. I mean, I don't think there's like a book. And so I think that people just have to find that within themselves, whether you're male or female, and feel comfortable in your own shoes. And
That's true. And Laurie, how do you feel about that?
I think it's a combination of being innate and learned. I'm going to share this in a very funny card, and it's a little girl, and she's got her hands on the hip, and she's yelling at a little boy, and she says to him, "I'm not bossy. I have leadership skills."
I know that. I've seen that.
It's a great card, but I think it's something you choose to be a leader. I think it's something you have to desire to grow in, and you have to make a decision, as you're saying, to take the consequences that go with leadership as well. And it's not always easy. So, we have to make decisions, sometimes not popular, and you have to feel comfortable in that. But I do think we're born with both. You have an innate in you that puts you on a way of trying to be a leader, different, wanting to go ahead, forge ahead, show up, right? And then there's the piece that we can train within people. So I do believe both.
I agree with that. And there's a lot of sacrifice too, I think, involved with leadership and making choices. And sometimes that's difficult. I remember Indra Nooyi, the former CEO of PepsiCo, saying that, that was one of her big issues. She had a family and a husband and a mom who lived with her. And she was very fortunate that, but she said there were many times I had to make choices where I had to leave my kids or not attend a graduation. And, there was, it's being a woman leader or a male leader is, there's making choices and decisions for sure. Sherlita, I'm going to ask you all the panelists a question right now about, and this is a big issue that we all face in our lives, men too, and that's handling the work-life balance. I know it seems overplayed, but I hear so many women dealing with this. I mean, I would love to hear from each of our panelists how you manage your own work-life balance. Is there a secret to it, or, speaking of choices? Stacey?
Okay, I am not the one to, I have to be authentic here. I can't tell you that I figured out this conundrum. I am a single 53-year-old woman. So what else am I going to do but work and go home and pour myself a glass of wine? That is how I yeah, that's it. I'm sorry. Everybody else should really do this.
Yeah, a cheers to that, by the way. I'll lift my glass. Sherlita, what, do you have a key to that, or?
Well, I think my epiphany came when I told you my youngest daughter has a serious disability and she was in the hospital quite ill. And I told her, I said, honey, mommy has to go to work. There are sick children that I need to take care of. And she said, what about me? And at that point, I made a decision to go to CDC because they had sick time and I didn't have sick time really as a private practitioner. And so I think at some point you have to take the needs of your family into consideration. And sometimes that means changing directions, which I did, and I don't regret it all.
That's great advice. That is great advice. Changing direction for sure. And Laurie?
So similar to Stacy, I don't have the demands of a family. I'm single. So I don't have to worry about getting home for children or, making dinner for the husband, if that still happens. I do reservations mostly, but I do think family is a priority. And so for me, when it comes to the decisions made, it always has to be for what I need to do for my family first, and then work. And it's not easy. I mean, I work like everyone else on this call who's here, long hours, but there are times where I have to set the boundaries really to be where I need to be for my family. And I'll never regret that decision. It has served me well. So I've managed it to this point, but there are sacrifices. You always have to make a decision about what takes priority when.
It's so true. And Judith, how about you?
I apologize. There's a bell going off here. It may mean that their meeting's beginning, and I so want to answer this question. I, like Stacy, am single, no dependents. I am 53 years old. There is no such thing as work-life balance for me.
Yep, that's really
I echo
interesting.
her sentiment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, and boy, Stacy, you and Judith and Laurie have a lot in common there.
We're going out after this. No. I said though, because I want to be clear. This is a personal choice, and I encourage my team, please God, the team that's on here, please tell me if I'm not doing this right, but I want them to take their vacation time, and I want them to go on trips with their families, and I encourage them to, work from home for a day if that's going to give you some sanity. Please do as I say, not as I do. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Judith's shaking her head. Is the bell still going off, Judith?
You all may know this. It must be meeting time for them. It's still going on. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's the County Board of Legislators. Yeah. Because I was actually going to address a question to you, Judith, and as an African-American women leader on the panel tonight, I know we're all trying to do the best we can to help increase opportunity, exposure, equity for marginalized women in our shared community. And I didn't know if you would have any recommendations for our women leaders. And if your bell is still going off, I can ask Sherlita and Stacey, and Laurie the same question. Yeah.
Love to answer it. Bell's still going.
But I'd love to hear from our other women leaders. What's your recommendation of the best way we can create and increase, opportunity and exposure and equity for marginalized women?
I like to offer, guidance to women who are interested in medicine, whether it's as a nurse. I started out, I was a nurse before I was a doctor. And, a lot of women I find just don't feel like they're good enough to apply to medical school, to apply, to go to nursing school. We just don't have that faith sometimes in our own ability. So I like to have conversations with young women who are interested and try to give them the sense that, if I could do it, you can do it. It's doable. You just have to be willing to put the work in. And if you're willing to put the work in and sacrifice, you can accomplish almost anything. And they just need someone to say, it's possible. You can do this.
And we can do that for other women that we know who are marginalized in our community through the great United Way program of Alice and through other ways in our community. Any ideas, Stacy or Laurie, you'd like to share?
I think mentoring is key and getting into I think for nursing that we start in a very young age in some of the local schools where we've had opportunity to mentor students and help them grow professionally and help them determine where they want to get. But it is the mentoring piece. I think, opportunities open, but people aren't always sure, especially women in minority aren't always sure how to go about navigating certain things, and that if you've had the experience and you're able to share and help them, our role is to help each other as women. And
Yes,
so I
great.
firmly believe in mentoring and supporting.
And Stacy, I know you're a mentor.
It's my passion, and has been for a very long time, ever since New York-Presbyterian had a program called the Emerging Leadership Council, and many of us were mentors, and it's a wonderful feeling to be able to pass it on. But I do want to talk a little bit about diversifying, because it doesn't happen by accident. And I don't want to sound preachy, but you have to make a concerted effort, particularly if you're in a geography that is not very diverse. So you have to ask your recruiters to give you, candidates that are from diverse communities and diverse ethnicities and races. And so we've got to make that a priority as leaders. Now, I believe in hiring the best candidate for the job. But if we can do that and have panels that have slates of applicants that are diverse, you're going to get somebody in there that fits into your team, that you think you can really forge a relationship with, and that will succeed and do very well in the job that they're applying for. And at this juncture where we are in this time, it's our responsibility.
100% agree. And I'm sure we all agree with you, Stacy. Those are really great words, I think, to end our 9 on. It's 5 after 7. We've passed the hour a little bit, but I do want to ask you each one final question. And that is, I'm going to ask you each individually in one word, tell all the people who are listening on the phone tonight, what is the most important characteristic of a leader in one word? Sherlita?
Persistence.
Great. And Laurie?
Grit.
Judith?
Gratitude.
Oh, perfect. And the bell is off. Great. And Stacy?
Art.
Art. Well, I'm so glad we recorded this, because those are incredible words. I'm just going to quote this one last message from Margaret Mead, who was just a great woman herself, who said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." And I thank all the wonderful women on here tonight, our wonderful Taryn Duffy, and all of our panelists. I ask our panelists to share the chat, because everyone's congratulating you. And now I'm turning it back to Margaret Tramontine, our lady leader for this evening. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Liz. As always, we are so very grateful to you for your graciousness and your incredible willingness to do whatever United Way asks, whenever, whatever, and especially include facilitating this amazing conversation tonight. Liz, you are a champ. You really are, and you're an exceptional leader. Our heartfelt congratulations to you, Taryn, as our 2021 Woman of Distinction. It's an honor so well deserved. We applaud your tenacity and your passionate voice as you continue to promote gender equality for women, and that's in life, in their careers, and in using their own voices to make change. We also know how very committed you have been and continue to be to the hundreds of employees at Empire City through this challenging time. So bravo and congratulations. I know I join our audience tonight in expressing how truly honored we are to have spent time with this panel of very distinguished women leaders in the healthcare sector. who've been on, clearly you've heard, on the front line and leading the charge in our community's ongoing battle with the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Amler, Stacy Petrover, Judith Watson, Laurie and Walsh, thank you on behalf of everyone here this evening for absolutely everything you do in our community to help others, as well as, I should say, your grace, abundant emotional intelligence, and leadership under pressure. And I also have to add, thank you for your collective enthusiasm from the get-go to participate in this Take a Walk in Your Shoes evening, as well as your willingness, believe it or not, everyone, their willingness to meet and plan with us in advance for this important and inspiring conversation. You've got busy women who are willing to do constantly. It's standard for busy women, I think. I am very humbled and so very grateful to each of you for your generosity of self. Thank you. Many years ago, we named and indeed we branded this annual event, Take a Walk in Her Shoes, as a phrase, a message, and a reminder that whether you're a featured speaker, an honoree, an attendee, or even Alice, who we at United Way work so hard to help and empower, we have much in common to share with one another and with those around us. As I hope you have experienced this evening, in many ways we relate to each other, and most importantly, we have the ability to inspire and encourage each other, gifts we all need as leaders and as women, truly knowing that we walk together. And speaking of being inspired, if you've been moved or inspired by anything and everything you've heard this evening, and if you're in a position to do more, please visit United Way's website to donate and help provide support for our Alice families that Tom spoke of earlier this evening. They would truly greatly appreciate our collective kindness so very much this season. Finally, generosity of self and kindness can help get us through much of what life throws our direction. As we leave you tonight, please remember to be kind to yourself as well, despite being a leader. And so from all of us at United Way and the Women's Leadership Council, I'm Margaret Tramontine. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a healthy and happy holiday season. Thank you and take care.